How's everybody doing today?
Good, good. It's another Tuesday. Excited for it. Um, Excited for our show. We always have such great topics. And I'm sort of happy we're sort of taking a little detour this weekend. I know last week we spoke about a little bit of mental health, but I think this session is really great change of pace. And we have you as the expert here to guide us on most of these topics today, which I'm really looking forward to. And I think we are going to speak about some legal considerations today, but today's a really good topic for mental health and dealing and how that relates to both, separation and divorce.
It's such a big part of it too. Like we have our clients like talking to us and as much as we are helping them legally, mental health plays such a big role as they're navigating through all these changes. And so it's always good to talk about these things and, have some more awareness out there for people as they kind of make their way through these changes in their life. I'm a little bit sick today.
100,
Some coffee with me, some tea. So bear with
Oh
me.
no. Can you believe the
but
weather today? It was so warm. I went for a walk in the morning and I was like sweating buckets by the end because I wasn't prepared for how warm it was going to be today.
I didn't get a chance to go outside today, unfortunately.
Oh
So
no.
I didn't get to experience how nice the weather was, but uh, I know we're definitely lucky. I saw on my watch today that it was 22 degrees, so I felt the heat and I felt the nice weather today, even though I was at my desk. Anyways, I do know that it is 5 o'clock, so it is officially after hours. Welcome to our viewers today to Family Law Now After Hours, both here on Zoom as well as on YouTube. Today's topic is divorce and mental health support. Please note to our viewers that the purpose of this series is to discuss general information on separation, divorce, and other family law matters, and that any information provided here should not be construed as legal advice. We do have a Q&A feature that allows you and the audience on Zoom to submit any questions or comments you may have. We really appreciate any comments or questions you may have as it helps guides our conversation and allows us to have somewhat of an interactive component with our viewers. If you do have any questions regarding your specific matter, however, please either call our office or a lawyer in your area to book a consultation so that you're able to receive tailored advice to your specific matter. And as always, stay tuned until the end as we will be sharing how you could schedule a free 20-minute meeting with one of our lawyers. Now on to bios with the amazing people on your screen. Beginning with Shanza, she is a dedicated family law lawyer with a strong focus on compassionate and effective legal representation. Her background in business management enhances her strategic approach to legal matters. Shanza excels in negotiation, achieving favorable settlements through strategic dialogue and strong advocacy for her clients. She prioritizes clear communication, ensuring that clients are informed and empowered throughout the legal process. On your screen, we also have Jonathan Painter. He is a registered social worker and psychotherapist who works in the family law system. He completes parenting plan assessments, voice of the child reports, family mediation, and collaborative family law, all in private practice. He also provides psychotherapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, family therapy, and couples counseling for both children and adults. Jonathan is on the board of directors of the Ontario Association for Family Mediation, and he holds the executive position as treasurer of the board, and he is also on the board of the Collaborative Practice Durham region. There's also myself. I am, too, a compassionate family lawyer driven by a deep desire to support families through challenging times. With a background in commerce, I bring strong negotiation, analytical, and critical thinking skills to my legal practice. During my articling period, I gained confidence in handling a wide range of family law matters. I emphasize active listening, clear communication, and empathy that fosters a comfortable environment for clients. I am certified as a collaborative lawyer with the Ontario Association of Collaborative Professionals, and thus I offer clients an alternative dispute resolution approach to avoid court. Outside of work, I am a dedicated Toronto Maple Leafs fan. By the way, they play the Bruins tonight, 7 o'clock. Don't miss it. As well as the LA. I always have to throw that in there. And the LA Rams, and I enjoy playing hockey and watching comedy movies. So with that, we have our introductions. Let's dive into today's topic. There's so much to cover in so little time, but really and truly, divorce and mental health support is such a big topic. Shanza mentioned it in our initial dialogue that lawyers often wear so many hats, whether that be business evaluators, lawyers themselves, we're mental health advocates, but really and truly, we have Jonathan here. He's going to be giving us an inside look, given that he is a mental health professional and a family professional. And I'm really excited that he's here to share his wisdom with us today. So we are going to dive right into the importance of mental health during divorce proceedings. So with respects to the emotional aspect of divorce, the emotional toll of divorce can often be severe, causing stress, anxiety, depression, or even trauma in some instances. And these mental health challenges can affect individuals' capacity to engage in the legal process, be able to think clearly, and make rational decisions. And ensuring mental health support during this time can lead to a more constructive approach to resolving the issues involved. Uh, Looking more at the importance of mental health during, separation or divorce proceedings, especially if they're involving children, is the impact on parental responsibilities. Strong mental health is really and truly essential for fulfilling parenting responsibilities and decision making. When parents maintain their mental well-being, they are better equipped to make level-headed decisions that are in the best interest of their children. This stability also translates to fewer conflicts and as well as a reduced likelihood of legal disputes escalating, which benefits both the parties as well as their children. Turning now to more sort of the self-care and support through either therapy or counseling. Engaging in both either therapy or counseling during a separation can provide parents and individuals with tools to handle both intense emotions as well as navigate stress effectively. And Jonathan, I'm sure, can attest to that when he speaks to this later. Mental health support can help mitigate the common tendency to make emotionally reactive decisions, ensuring a clear focus on constructive solutions rather than conflict. That's really important in family law. Oftentimes, it's a very adversarial environment, so we really try to work on these constructive solutions rather than going to court and instigating further. And additionally, counseling can also provide an outlet to work through the feelings of loss as well as uncertainty that often accompany separation and divorce. Good mental health also allows, parents, even children, to engage more productively in the legal process. And this can include the ability to process complex legal information, managing discussions with your counsel, or if you're self-rep dealing with opposing counsel, as well as engage in negotiations without undue emotional interference. And strong mental health and strong mental well-being can also help parties better articulate their position, which I find is really key, as well as make informed decisions regarding settlements. That's really important. Oftentimes, us as lawyers, we convey competent legal advice to parties, and that's so that they can make an informed decision regarding, how they would like to proceed in terms of next steps. So being able to have that strong mental health allows individuals to do so at a greater length and with more effectiveness and urgency. Dealing with the children, again, family courts, we've said it over and over on this program, family courts prioritize the children's best interests. And that does also include assessing the mental stability of each parent. A parent's mental health affects their ability to provide a safe and supportive home, which directly impacts the well-being and development of children. And along those lines, a parent with good mental health is more likely to foster a positive co-parenting environment, even post-divorce. And that reduces the likelihood of ongoing conflict that may negatively impact the children. So with that said, taking all of that into consideration, Shanza, what are some common mental health challenges that are faced during separation or divorce?
Well, thank you for that great overview, Joe. And I think you kind of, when you started, talked about how divorce is associated with a lot of emotional impact on people and the parties. And kind of like listing down some of the common challenges, we should look at both short-term and long-term impacts that this process can have on people. Starting with some short-term challenges, we are looking at the immediate aftermath of a divorce or separation, which can bring very intense emotional responses in people. There's sadness, there's anger, grief, anxiety, and these emotions can make it difficult to concentrate, make decisions, or even manage day-to-day responsibilities effectively. And Joe, you even mentioned how these emotions can also impact how you're navigating the legal process and how you're kind of taking the information and how you're able to work with it to make your way through the legal process of getting the separation and divorce finalized. And these emotions can really impact how you're able to process the information. And then aside from emotional, we're also looking at physical symptoms of distress, the impacts that can have in your body: headaches, fatigue, trouble sleeping, appetite changes. And this stress can manifest in many different ways. Many of our clients will report feeling exhausted or on edge. And this is really just you trying to deal with all the emotional and physical symptoms that can come with dealing with something that's so emotional and has such a huge impact on your life. And like I said, like all these changes can really disrupt your daily life. Because with separation, you're going to see changes in your living arrangements, in your finances, in your routines. The separation itself will bring instability. And adjusting to these new roles and responsibilities can be challenging. And again, this can kind of trigger the emotional response that you may have to the separation. Strained relationships is another consequence. Tension with mutual friends and extended family, even your children, if they're older and they may be more involved in the process and they know what's going on, a lot of tensions can arise. You can lose your friends. You can lose some of your mutual friends, specifically, especially if you're a couple and you have the same group of friends. People sometimes feel lonely or depressed. They may feel judged, or they may feel like, their side of the story was never told or heard by their friends or family. And so this can really come back to them and really affect them emotionally and mentally. And in general, if you are someone who relied on your partner for emotional support, once you separate, you will struggle with that loss of support system. And again, this will cause even more difficulties. Just to hit a bit more on some of the long-term impacts, we're looking at stress, anxiety, depression. That is something people can struggle with for a long time as they go through the process for any unresolved issues from the divorce, which can lead to ongoing mental health concerns. Prolonged sadness or sense of loss following a divorce can develop. It can develop into clinical depression if it's not addressed timely. There's also trauma. And if Joe, you kind of mentioned that there's trauma, especially when we're looking at, more contentious divorces, particularly those, excuse me, involving abuse or significant betrayal or sometimes even cheating, as some clients would come to us. And they may develop symptoms similar to PTSD or flashbacks or trust issues, and even anxiety in new relationships can linger long after the divorce is finalized, depending on what you went through in your previous relationship. As for some practical aspects, there could be impacts when it comes to your career and financials. Divorce can have a longer lasting impact on some financial challenges that people may face over time. And you could see some impact on your career performances. Like I said, challenges with future relationships kind of come in here too. So there's a lot of impacts, and they can come in many different ways, and they can affect you in different aspects of your life. It is a challenging time. And so I think one of the reasons we're kind of doing this session is to kind of bring more awareness to these challenges people face so they can be addressed in a more timely manner.
No, for sure. Thank you. Thank you, Shanza. Um, Jonathan, before you sort of discuss about the therapeutic options that are available for people to sort of inquire into, do you have any sort of comments on what Shanza just mentioned?
So I have comments on what you both mentioned, because I think there's a couple of points that I think are really important to highlight for people. First of all, Shanza, you talked about how like separation divorce, it's an emotional issue, right? It's a reconfiguring of family systems. So you might have had like two parents and two kids, and now you've got two separate whole households with one parent, two kids, and friends and family get reconfigured as well. You might have had a lot of mutual friends and now you've lost them because of the separation. So it's at its core an emotional journey. And there was a couple of psychologists in the, I think, 70s and 80s who came up with what they called the Hayes-Rayet Life Stress Index. And I always like to refer to that because it's really illustrative of how difficult it can be to cope with separation and divorce. So on that scale, events in your life are added up, and the events go from kind of 1 to 100. 100 is the death of a spouse or a child. That's the most stressful thing that a person in, in North America at least can experience. Second on that list is divorce. Third on that list is separation. So we can see that they're very, very stressful events, and it's well recognized by psychologists and researchers how difficult it is. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is something you said, Joseph, and you talked about. Actually, you mentioned it too, Shanza, how cycles of conflict can make the divorce process worse from a legal point of view, right? Like the problems in family law are not law problems, they're not financial problems, they're emotional problems. People bring those emotional problems to the table and they interfere with their ability to get all these tasks worked out. Like, how are you going to, reconfigure the family system? What's going to be the parenting schedule? What's going to be the equalization payment? What's going to be the child support, spouse support? All those things are practical issues, and the emotions often get in the way of resolving them, which is, one of the reasons why we really recommend collaborative family law for people, because then you have the support of a full team. You've got the lawyers who deal with the legal stuff. You've got the family professional who deals with the emotional stuff. You've got the financial person who deals with the finances. And that whole team works together to support the couple through the process of separating, and in part can provide a lot of emotional support for the clients as well as they're going through that. Because, like you both said, it's a very, very difficult experience for people. So those are the kind of highlights that I wanted to pick out.
Yeah, thank you for sure. And then in terms of therapeutic options for people going through this situation, what do you yourself, someone who's a psychotherapist, you're a mediator, you're a collaborative family professional, you see this on a daily basis. What do you recommend to people who come through your door?
Yeah, so remember that, like, because it's the most stressful event that many people will go through in their life, sometimes our own coping strategies aren't enough and you need to reach out for help. Remember, we're a social animal. We rely on other people for everything, right? Like, I don't grow the strawberries that I had for breakfast. I didn't make the bread that I had for lunch. Somebody else made that stuff. I rely on them to feed me, and they rely on me to pay their wages and stuff like that as well. So we need to rely on other people to get by in life, and mental health is no different. So my advice to everybody is, if you're feeling stressed, don't hesitate to reach out for help. We know it works. There's decades and decades of research showing that psychotherapy does work. Now, what kind of psychotherapy you need might depend on your circumstance, right? So if you're just very stressed about the end of the relationship and you need a kind shoulder to cry on, therapy, that's a great option. But maybe you have a more severe issue. Maybe you've got some depression or anxiety as a result of all the stress, or maybe other life experiences that the depression and anxiety got triggered by the separation and divorce. So then you might want to look at something like cognitive behavioral therapy, which can be a really good way of addressing negative thinking patterns that lead to depression and anxiety. If you have emotional regulation issues, so you really have a hard time keeping a lid on your emotions and not acting out inappropriately in situations, your emotional response isn't proportional to the size of the problem sometimes. Maybe you need a different kind of therapy called dialectical behavioral therapy. And what that therapy does is it combines cognitive behavioral therapy with a whole bunch of other approaches that can help you deal with the emotional process of recovering from the separation. The way I often describe it to clients is like the separation is an emotional injury. And just like, say you break your leg, that's a physical injury. When you break your leg, you have to go through some time when you can't walk. Maybe you need to wear a cast. Maybe you need to go to physiotherapy. If you do all those things, you're going to come out of the process, mostly healed up and ready to walk and run again. And the same thing with therapy. When you're going through a divorce, it's a huge psychological injury. So let's put some treatments in place to help you recover and heal from that injury. And one of the ways is psychotherapy. So dialectical behavioral therapy, is a great way of helping learn how to manage your emotions better and calm down. So if you're in a high conflict divorce, highly recommend that as an option. And there are different people that might have different needs. So for example, if you experience violence in your relationship that you're leaving, that might have left you traumatized, with post-traumatic stress disorder. And PTSD, as it's known as, needs very particular kinds of treatments that do incorporate cognitive behavioral therapy and some of the things from dialectical behavioral therapy, but they also have their own pieces that need to be done as well to help people recover from the trauma. So for example, one option is something called EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprogramming, I think. And it's a type of therapy to help you learn to associate traumatic memories with calm emotions. Because one of the problems with PTSD is you associate those memories with traumatic and stressful emotions. And anytime you think about it, that gets triggered and overwhelms you. So EMDR can be a really great way of dealing with that trauma. Or maybe there's different issues that you need to address. So when family systems get reconfigured, it often causes a lot of conflict in the family, both between the parents and the children and the parents. So maybe family therapy is the answer for you. Maybe if one of the children, for example, is having a really hard time, adjusting to the separation, or maybe adjusting to a new intimate partner that you have, or their kids or whatever, family therapy might be the option, where a therapist works with the parents and the children to try to resolve the interpersonal issues. Another type of therapy that's often recommended in these cases is if there's been any parental alienation, or one or more children is becoming estranged from one of the parents, then it might be important to refer those clients to reconciliation or reunification therapy. And that's a very specialized kind of therapy. So not your average run-of-the-mill therapist won't be able to provide that kind of therapy. So it's really important that you find someone who has specific training and experience doing that kind of work, because it's not something that most social workers or psychotherapists or psychologists just learn routinely through school. It's something the skill set you kind of have to develop afterwards. Also, I would recommend, if your kids are having a difficult time dealing with the separation divorce, they may need individual therapy as well. And there's different options for that. They can go to, office therapy. I work with quite a few kids, but I don't work with younger kids. Younger kids might benefit more from someone who does play therapy or music therapy or expressive art therapy or something like that. That would be for kids that were like, 4 to 7 or 8, I would say. And then, depending on the maturity of the child, when they're, 7 to 9, in that range, usually that's when they can start kind of more office type psychotherapy, although they still benefit from play therapy. So I think that that kind of gives you a sense of some of the therapeutic options. There's also like support groups I would recommend people reach out to. There are so many people out there who've been divorced and separated and had a really hard time with it. Might as well club those people together so they can give each other support and advice and just feel heard, right? Like sometimes it's just nice to be in a room full of people that kind of understand what you've gone through and experienced. So support groups are a good source. And right now, if you're struggling, there's all kinds of options for therapy online as well if you can't get to an office or struggle to schedule that, or maybe you just prefer doing it remotely. So online platforms for therapy have exploded since COVID, and it's wonderful. It's made it way more accessible for a lot more people. So if you are struggling, reach out, find someone who can help you. If you work for an employer that gives you benefits, often those benefits will cover therapy sessions, and different organizations will have different packages. Some people it's only 1 or 2 sessions, some people it's unlimited. So it just depends on what your particular workplace offers, but make sure you check in with that program if you have one, because you often get much faster access to therapists doing that rather than going out and either finding your own therapist or going through a local agency like Durham Family Services for the folks that are in Durham region. So that's kind of an overview.
No, it was great. I just want to ask you real quick, because I know this has
Yeah.
come to my attention multiple times. There may be instances, for whatever reason, maybe because unfortunately there is still a stigma associated with seeking help for mental health support. And sometimes individuals may themselves think that they don't necessarily need the support. So what would you say to an individual who maybe doesn't believe they or their children need mental health support going through this process in their life? What would you say to someone like that?
Well, I mean, it is possible that they don't need it. Some people have enough resources, friends, family, support systems, we call them informal supports in our social work world, and they may not need it. But um, you know, there's no evidence that going to therapy is harmful. So even if you go and it's not helpful, then you're no further ahead than you were before, but you haven't done any damage to yourself. So try it out. And if people are reluctant to go, just remember that sometimes life throws more at us than we can handle, and everybody's been in that situation at some point in their life. And when that happens, you need to up your game in terms of how you're coping. So part of that upping your game might be going to therapy and giving it a try. But it does work. We know it works. And if it doesn't work, at the very least, it's not harmful. So go out and give it the old college try and see what happens.
Perfect. Thanks, Jonathan. And you did mention something in informal support systems. And I think Shanza can touch on this a bit. Shanza, can you speak to these informal support systems that are available for people?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback to kind of what Jonathan talked about, like the different options you have to kind of assist you, with your mental health as you're going through separation. So attending different type of therapy depending on your needs. And then there's always like these support groups available. And attending these support groups that are often led by a counselor or therapist, they offer a community of people who are experiencing similar challenges. And oftentimes that can really offer the emotional support that people might need during these times. And, attending these groups can be a source of emotional validation, and even like practical advice and encouragement. So it's definitely worth checking out. I would say check out your local community centers. They can help connect people with these groups. And, Jonathan also mentioned there's both online and in person, different avenues that you can kind of go with. And there's so many digital and virtual options available these days. So look at your local community centers, and they can be a big source of support during these times. And also just emphasize talking to friends and family, having that listening ear, and even having some sort of help with your daily responsibilities, and just having that companionship from your family. It really gives you these trusted individuals who can help alleviate some of the feelings and isolation and really give you the encouragement that you need during these times. And another thing I'll just kind of talk about in addition to support groups is even looking at self-help resources and books. And many self-help books and online resources, they specifically focus on how to navigate a divorce and how to manage your mental health. Sometimes even for me, when I'm feeling down, this type of having access to this type of media and surrounding yourself with this sort of this text and having access to these avenues can really impact your mood and your outlook on things. And so it's definitely worth surrounding yourself with positive energy and positive media and context that can really help you through the process. Yeah, so just wanted to add these little few points there. Thanks.
No, thank you. Go
I
ahead,
just
John.
wanted
Sorry.
to add one thing that I forgot to mention when you asked me that question, Joseph, about, how do you know if you need support? Well, the answer is, if you ask a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a social worker, they look at what's called your functioning. How is the stress from the divorce affecting your day-to-day functioning? Is it making it impossible to get to work? Is it impossible to do your laundry? Is it difficult to, have a conversation with someone without crying uncontrollably or screaming at them, whatever? So if you look at your functioning before and after the separation, if after the separation it's not doing well, you're not functioning well, that's when you need to know, that should trigger you to go and find help. So, and same with kids. If you're worried about your kids, look at their functioning. Are they doing well in school? Are they sleeping okay? Are they eating okay? Are they spending time with friends? Are they withdrawing? Are they not wanting to, have dinner with the family? Are they spending excessive amounts of time on their, Xbox or PlayStation or whatever? So you want to look at their day-to-day functioning, and if it's changed for the worst, and if they're not functioning well, then you need to go get help.
I think that's also a really great segue into our next topic is diving into the impact of divorce and separation on children and their mental health, because it's not just the parents going through a separation or divorce, it's the kids who are also going through a separation or divorce. So can you speak on that a little bit?
Well, I can speak on it a lot, but I'll just speak on it a little bit for today. I just actually got out of
That's
a
why I
3 hour.
specified, unfortunately.
Yeah. Clever, because I can just talk forever. Yeah, I just got out of a 3 hour presentation on this very topic. So there's something that scientists have kind of discovered over the last 30 or 40 years called adverse childhood experiences. And these are very stressful, negative experiences that impact a child's development going forward and makes them much more susceptible to a host of health and mental health problems later in life, like depression, suicidality, diabetes, heart disease, all these kinds of things. So the problem is stress. Stress, we all deal with stress. Children deal with stress. Everybody deals with stress. But when stress gets to a certain level, it becomes toxic, like literally toxic to us, and starts to break down our body and our mind. And it's not sustainable. It's a type of stress that is harmful in the long term. So you need to minimize the amount of time you spend in that toxic stress zone and find a way to manage your stress so you get it back to a tolerable stress zone. So toxic stress for kids is terrible, and it really negatively impacts their development. So their whole nervous system develops in a different way than it would if they didn't have those stressful experiences. And it makes them much more susceptible to things like depression, anxiety, attempting suicide, substance use disorders like alcoholism or drug abuse, and as I mentioned already, a host of health problems. So, so what we want to do during our separation divorce is completely shield the kids from anything that's going on, right? Like, obviously they need to know that their parents are separating, but they don't need to know what the parents think about each other or who had an affair or who's the better parent, anything like that. They need to be, shielded from yelling and shouting and throwing coffee mugs at each other, and nasty comments about the other parent, those kinds of things. Those stressful experiences actually increase the risk of long-term permanent harm. So there are 4 factors that result in long-term harm when a kid is going through separation and divorce, and they are exposure to conflict, including violence. It doesn't have to be violence, but a lot of yelling, shouting, that kind of thing. It could be violence as well. So that's really bad for them. Losing a parent is really bad. So if after the separation, one parent, goes off and doesn't see the kids anymore, or maybe is prevented from seeing the kids by the parent, that's really bad for them. Or if they have parent-child relationship problems, if after the separation the child has a problematic relationship with either or both parents, that's really bad for them. And lastly, if they're living in poverty after the separation, that is really bad for them. Poverty is just really, really bad for kids in general, and it doesn't matter if the parents are getting separated or not. But generally, after a separation, people's income, well, their income doesn't go down, but they're not sharing expenses anymore, so their expenses go way, way up. Their income stays the same, and it can be an issue that children are suffering through poverty post-separation. So that's actually a spiel that I often give when parents are discussing support issues, and I explain to them the reason why these support laws exist, like child support and spousal support, is to make sure that kids aren't living in poverty post-separation, because we know that's really bad for them. So just one last thing I want to mention about that is, remember, those 4 things are exposure to conflict or violence, losing a parent, poverty, or parent-child relationship problems. All 4 of those things are bad for the kids, regardless of whether their parents separate or not. So we want to, but they're more likely to happen during a separation. So we just want to be mindful of those things and shielding the kids from those things. So we want to make sure post-separation, if it's reasonable, obviously if it's putting the kid at risk, that's a different story. But if it's reasonable, making sure the children see both parents a significant amount of time, and those relationships are maintained. Making sure that you, as a separated parent, you never say anything bad about the other parent around the kids, no matter how much you want to, or how angry or upset you are with them. You want to make sure that they always have enough food and shelter and clothing, and a decent standard of living, at least comparable to their previous pre-separation standard of living. Just want to make sure that any relationship problems that come up because of the separation get addressed therapeutically in family therapy.
100%. And there's a great judge, Justice McLeod. He works out of the Tri-County area, and
I know him well.
whenever he sees situations like this, he always makes sure that the parties have turned their attention to the rules for separated parents. And I believe there's about
I
15
love
or
it.
16 items, and it's pretty much everything that you've discussed, today. And I think sometimes, through no fault of their own, I think sometimes parents get in the heat of the moment, they get in the heat of the situation, and they don't necessarily intend to cause damage to their children. It's just more so a collateral damage that it wasn't intended. It just does happen, unfortunately. And I mean, once I think parents become aware of their actions going through this process, and they sort of take a look at these rules, it obviously it makes a lot of sense, but in practice, with all the emotions running high, and as you mentioned too, a lot of people are going from dual household incomes. Now you're going to a single household income, so there's financial stresses associated with the process. So I mean, it's really, really important that you're ensuring that your children, like Jonathan said, um, are not involved in the process. He said, as he said, they can be aware that the parties are separating, but they should really have no knowledge of the litigation process, or even the separation
No,
process. If you're doing it outside of court, they should have no involvement. And that sort of
none.
turns
Can I add one more
my
thing to what
attention
you said
towards.
there, Joseph?
Yeah, please go ahead.
One thing I
Yeah, of
forgot to
course.
mention about the adverse childhood experiences is they're cumulative. So 2 of them is twice as bad as 1 of them, and 4 of them is twice as bad as 2 of them. So, and they're like check marks. They don't go away, or scars, I guess, is a better way to describe them. They are permanent scars that stay with the child for life. So it's not like you can have an adverse childhood experience and then have a good week and they're erased. They're still there. So the more of those children have, the more at risk they are. So if they have 4 or more, we know, for example, that they're like 12 times more likely to attempt suicide as a youth or an adult than someone who has 0 adverse childhood experiences. So the research on this is very thorough and solid. We know the effect. So yeah, I just really appeal to people, do what you can to protect the kids from the stress of a separation divorce. It's so important for their well-being. Can't emphasize that enough.
Mhm.
Sorry to interrupt you there.
And knowing that and knowing that it is preventable, this is something that doesn't have to happen as a result of separation divorce. It is something that's preventable. What would you say is the role of family therapists or family professionals in supporting families through this process?
Yeah, so we can play, a variety of roles. So a lot of people access therapy, leading up to the separation and after the separation, just to help them cope. And sometimes it's just good to have someone that you can be honest and open with, and just kind of. People always describe, "Oh, I'm sorry, I just vomited all my problems on you today," and you know I always tell my clients, no, that's what I'm here for. This is why, one of the reasons why therapy is helpful, because you can unload your problems and concerns on someone, and that process alone is really helpful. So they can play that role. Now, you mentioned family professionals, and that's really specific to collaborative family law, where you have 2 lawyers working together and they have an agreement to work together, and part of their agreement says they're not going to court. And sometimes they can bring in, or often they bring in, what are called neutral professionals, and one of them might be a family professional. As a family professional, I will help the parties come up with their parenting plan. It will help improve their communication skills. I will help resolve conflicts. It's a big part of what I do. When something blows up, clients call me and I help them resolve it, and for them to come to an understanding. Sometimes I'll even, actually earlier this week, I helped parents come up with what I call ground rules. So these are basic sets of rules that will help keep the peace while the parties are still living together while going through the separation. So for example, it might be, having separate living spaces in the home, or, letting each other know when you're going to be using the laundry, basic stuff like that. It could be, or it could be, bigger stuff like, don't message each other at all. Like, communicate with each other through the professional team. So yeah, there's lots of ways in which a family professional can help manage that conflict and reduce it. And remember what I said earlier, conflict is emotional. The problems in family law are all emotional problems. Sometimes they have a financial or parenting root, but at their core, there's still an emotional issue. And so having a family professional on your team that you can call and help deal with these kinds of emotional issues can be really, really vital to help get you through the divorce and separation process without too much pain and suffering. And then, you know, um, sometimes we'll talk to the kids, like especially if the kids are older, if they're, 10, 11, 12, or teenagers. Family professionals will often speak to the kids to find out, what their views and preferences are. What kind of schedule would you like to see? What are some important things that your parents should know about how this separation's impacted you? And bringing that information back to the parents can be really helpful, and get them refocused on what the kids' needs are, and stop a lot of the conflict. So that's kind of a general idea of how therapists can help. And then I already mentioned a couple others, like reunification therapy can be really helpful if there's parent-child relationship problems, or when parents getting estranged from the kids. Reach out to a therapist for that, for sure. And I think that covers it all. Can you think of any other roles that therapists might play?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we could spend each session we could spend about an hour on each specific topic. I know that
Mhm.
it's very difficult to confine a certain session to to 5-6 minutes of discussion. Shanza, is there anything you
Mhm.
wanted to add? I think Jonathan pretty much defined the role correctly. Is there anything else you maybe
Yeah,
want to add to
no,
that?
no, honestly, like Jonathan covered all of it. I'm just thinking, we were talking about how to not involve children in the divorce, but I feel like we have sometimes people coming to us where it's too late for them to kind of practice those guidelines. And I just wanted to kind of emphasize on, if you are in a situation where you were in a divorce or a separation where, the children were somehow involved in this process and now the relationship has been impacted. So I just wanted to say that even at that point, therapy can be really, really helpful, especially family therapy, and attending those sessions with your children to kind of undo some of the damage that has been done. So it's never too late to kind of involve therapists and go to therapy. Because I know we kind of focused on, keeping it, easy from the get-go. But if you find yourself in a situation where you're kind of past that, you still have these options available to kind of address some of the harm that has been done.
No,
Yeah,
100%.
great point, Shanza.
Yeah, it's definitely never too late. And like we said before, these are all things that are preventable. So the sooner you act, the better. And of course, it wouldn't be an after hours podcast if we didn't speak about the legal considerations for mental health and the issues and how they may interact with going through the separation and divorce process. So beginning first, is what we call the decision-making responsibility and parenting time. So that encompasses those two factors encompass what's called parenting. Decision-making responsibility was commonly referred to as custody. Custody is no longer used. That was changed in the legislation back in 2022, as well as parenting time was formerly known as access. Again, that term is no longer used as of 2022. And with respects to making both decision-making responsibility and parenting time determinations, courts do take mental health into account when determining them. Judges assess whether each parent can meet the physical and emotional needs of their children, be able to provide a stable, healthy environment, and really any history of untreated mental health issues or behaviors resulting from mental health conditions that could compromise children's safety. That's really important. That's a key distinction, is that they can compromise the children's safety or well-being, may influence the court's parenting decisions. Conversely, parents who proactively manage mental health concerns may demonstrate to the court their commitment to responsible parenting, which is really important. As always, we're circling back to the best interest of the child. Family law does emphasize the best interest of the child, which includes everything from evaluating the mental health and emotional stability of each parent. Judges may consider whether a parent's mental health actually impedes their capacity to make sound parenting decisions or fulfill their parental responsibilities. Like I said before, it has to have an impact on the child's safety or well-being, and a focus on welfare, means that the court seeks a stable, supportive environment. And mental health is a key factor really in determining which parent can best provide this, or if both parents can best provide this through a shared parenting regime. With respects to the actual disclosure of mental health records may be disclosed if they are pertinent to parenting ability as well as, again, the child's best interests. However, disclosure of these records, as per the rules of evidence, must balance the relevance to the case as well as the individual's privacy rights. And the court sometimes may also require that these documents are redacted. Certain things may be left out. That's also on a case-by-case basis. But really, it's the measuring of whether or not how relevant is this information in determining whether or not they're capable of offering effective, a stable parenting environment to their children. And the court may require sometimes mental health assessments to ascertain a parent's mental well-being as well as their parenting capabilities. But again, that's only as far as it impacts the child's welfare. With respects to capacity to participate in court proceedings, mental health is a relevant factor in determining what's called a party's capacity to actually engage fully and fairly in the legal process. And in cases where a person's mental health may impair their understanding of proceedings or their ability to participate, courts may actually require an assessment of capacity. And this evaluation ensures that all the parties can effectively participate in the legal matter, which is basically essential for a fair proceeding and outcome. And oftentimes, if it is determined that a parent is not they don't have capacity, so they're known as being incapacitated, a litigation guardian will be represented for them. With respects to support orders, as Jonathan mentioned earlier, support orders related to mental health needs. Sometimes support obligations may include considerations for mental health support, and that's particularly true if children require therapy or B, counseling as a result of the separation or divorce. Additionally, if one parent's mental health impacts their earning capacity, the court may also factor this into any spousal or child support determinations. For example, if spousal or excuse me, if support amounts may be adjusted to cover necessary treatments or counseling services for either party or the children, that would be included in what's called Section 7 expenses and may be attributed to the actual spousal support obligation one party has to the other. And finally, dealing with the idea of protection orders. So in situations where a party's mental health does pose a risk to others, protection orders may be requested to ensure safety. And, such orders are really particularly relevant if there is a risk of harm or instability that's resulting from severe mental health issues. Ontario family law or family law in general does provide mechanisms, such as restraining orders or exclusive possession orders for the matrimonial home, and when those are necessary to protect the children and the other parent from potential harm during or after the separation or divorce proceedings. So again, that's the legal considerations as they relate to mental health in a nutshell. Shanza, Jonathan, any of you guys want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I want to mention that, I hear from, I do a lot of Section 30 assessments for family court. And I often hear from parents that because the other parent has a mental health issue, it means they can't parent. And that's absolutely, completely untrue. It could mean that, but it likely doesn't. Like a lot of people have mental health problems and parent fine. It goes back to that functioning thing that I mentioned earlier. How does it affect their functioning as a parent? If you know my wife has a lot of anxiety, but she can still meet the kids' needs okay, and she's able to manage that anxiety quite well. Or, someone does suffer from depression because of the separation or because of all the relationship problems that led up to the separation. It doesn't mean that they can't parent. It just means that maybe they need a bit of extra help, or maybe they're coping fine. So I think it's important for parents to recognize that just because the other parent has a mental health issue doesn't automatically disqualify them from being a parent.
No, 100%. And I was actually involved in a case like that, where the father's he had schizophrenia, and that was one
Mm,
of the issues. As well as there's a couple other mental health diseases he was diagnosed with, and ultimately, as long as he was regularly seeing his therapists, he was seeing his doctors, taking the recommended medication, that didn't bar his ability to be able to be an effective parent and to be in the children's lives. So really, doesn't necessarily, like as Jonathan said, a parent can have mental health concerns, but unless it negatively impacts the children's well-being or safety, ultimately that's not going to exclude that parent from the child's life. So now moving forward from the legal consideration and moving away from the legal talk, Shanza, can you maybe share with the audience about some self-care tips for being able to maintain one's mental health or mental well-being, I should say?
Yeah, I'll kind of list down a few tips and self-care tips that people can kind of incorporate in their life to help with mental health and emotional impacts of a separation and divorce. So I will say start with establishing a routine. Having structure to your days helps provide stability. So keep regular sleep, have set times for meals, have an exercise schedule, and this is true especially as you are going through a change in your life where your life may feel very uncertain. So having some stability on things that you have more control over, and having some consistency there can really give you that sense of security and then sense of stability in your life that you might need as you navigate these changes in your life. Focus on your physical health, include daily exercises in your routine, even if it's a short walk. Um, Engage in a physical activity. Again, like doing these kind of activities can really help with stress and improving your overall mood. Limit overthinking. I know it's easier said, but sometimes it helps people to set aside a specific time to process the change and manage emotions rather than letting your thoughts intrude on you throughout the day. It's definitely worth an exercise to help manage your emotions and thoughts throughout the day. Again, connect with support networks, family, friends, support groups, therapy. Take the help that you have access to and kind of help. Accessing these services can really reduce feelings of isolation. Um, Engage in mediation and mindfulness. Simple mindfulness practices or guided mediation. There's apps available too on your phone and online that you can use, and they can really help you calm your mind or maybe reduce stress and help develop a sense of peace. And even if you don't see a huge change, even the time that you kind of put aside undertaking these activities can really impact your mood and your day. And reconnect with your hobbies and passions, things that you enjoy, do things that you love. This can help restore a sense of normalcy. Set manageable goals for yourself. Focus on your short-term achievements. Be easy on yourself. Celebrate each small win, and just be gentle with yourself. I think how you plan your day and your outlook on every day can really impact your emotional health and your mental health. And really having and making mindful choices as you progress through your day can really help you with these stresses.
You forgot to be gentle to your lawyer. You forgot. You gotta add that
And your
one in sometime.
therapist.
Yeah.
And your therapist. No, exactly. But no, Shanza, those are some great self-care tips. I think even if you're not going through, a traumatic time, I think a lot of those things can still be incorporated into your daily life regardless. Um, I think they're really great. And I do a lot of those things as well. There's stresses of work, stresses of life, because everyone has stresses in their life. It's stress is not unique to individuals going through a separation or divorce, right? So I think it's really important. Self-care is really important. It's not spoken about enough, and it definitely should be. Jonathan,
Yeah, and
um,
I think too, it's it's uh it's important to um recognize that you're going to need extra support through this process, and what might have worked before may not be enough, so you got to step up your game. So you might have to go to um some serious lengths to reduce other sources of stress, right? Like, don't look at the news for a few weeks while you're going through this, or if you've got like a really stressful thing that you have to do, maybe put it off until you're better able to cope. Yeah, it's a tough process to go through. It's really awful.
no, 100%. And I know you've already spoken about sort of the support groups that individuals going through this process can reach out to. But in terms of community resources and as well as some, long-term mental health strategies, what would you recommend to individuals walking through your front door?
So find out about services in your area. It's going to look a little different in different areas, but there are certain mandated services, and mandated means the province or the federal government says we have to have this service in every jurisdiction. So things like children's mental health is available in every jurisdiction. So there's, Kinark or Frontenac Youth Services or Blue Hills. There's different agencies that offer the same service or similar service. So check in your neighborhood for what's available there. I know in Durham region, for example, Durham Family Services exists and it provides subsidized therapy for individuals and families. If you have a workplace benefits program, you can access services through your employee assistance program, and that will give you access to very quick and usually free certain number of therapy appointments. Some plans are better than others. I've had people walk through my door that have unlimited, so they can have as many sessions as they want, and some people only have one or two. So check with your employee assistance program, and then just find services that tailor to your needs. For example, if you're involved in a very stressful family court situation, there are family court support programs available for women in every jurisdiction in Ontario. So definitely access that and reach out for help for them. Yeah, I mean, if you have questions about what is out there, you can search Google or your local township or city website will have services listed on it as well. And ask your lawyer. Your lawyers are a very good way of connecting you with services and therapists and whatnot. So.
No, thank you. Thank you for that overview. I mean, there are so many resources that can assist you. I know oftentimes it feels like you're in a dark place or in a tunnel and you don't have the ladder to help you get out, but there really are so many resources. Unfortunately, it does take some navigating on either your phone or your laptop, or even making a couple phone calls or going to, your local community center or even your local courthouse to get that. But there are resources available to help. What's really great about our firm is that we offer so many links to legal services and legal information. We have a wide array of YouTube videos, blogs, blog posts. Our boss, Russell Alexander, well, not Jonathan's boss, but my Shanza and my boss. So many great books about how you can access certain resources, especially as they pertain to legal. And, we do that because we believe in, access to justice and providing all those with the ability to at least receive legal information. And I mean, in respects to the mental health aspect, there are so many resources out there that people need to take advantage of. And it's just about being proactive and taking those steps yourself. And with that, that is our session for today. Thank you so much for you all for tuning into our after hours segment. For our Zoom attendees following this webinar, a brief survey will appear, allowing you to share your comments and suggestions for future topics that you'd like us to explore. As always, your feedback is greatly appreciated. To take advantage of the opportunity for a complimentary 20-minute meeting with one of our lawyers, please provide the code AFTER HOURS. That's AFTERHOURS with a space in between when scheduling your appointment. And be sure to register by noon this Friday. This code will only be available and be able to be redeemable by noon this Friday. We do have phone operators standing by now to take your call, or you can you can send an email to our intake department at intake, INTAKE, at russellalexander.com. Registration is also open for our next event. It's next Tuesday, titled Grandparents' Rights in Ontario. All you have to do to register is just go to russellalexander.com/familylawnow. Panelists, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. As always, I learned so much from you both. Does anyone want to throw in a last minute comment before we sign off for the night?
Just thanks for having me, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jonathan. Shanza, thank you as well. You're both so knowledgeable. I love learning from you both when you're on the show. I think, for on behalf of the viewers as well, you're both so knowledgeable and these sessions are really great. And I think speaking about mental health today I know it's a little bit of a detour from what we normally speak about, but nonetheless still extremely, extremely important. And to
Absolutely.
that, to
Yeah.
our viewers, 100%. Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for tuning into Family Law Now After Hours, and we would love to see you guys next week. Have a great evening.
Thank you.